What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert, and this is the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream, episode 82. For those of you guys that don't know, it's Revel Bikes. I mean, it is in the title and all, but I figured I should just go ahead and lead with that because I noticed that I did put a post on Instagram, and a lot of people are super stoked about this one, and so am I. So that should be pretty fun to talk about. Let's get to a couple of things first. I want you guys to do me a favor and either go by Instagram or Facebook and follow the page, because then you get a little bit of extra info about the channel and what's going on, and makes me feel good about myself seeing the subscriber count or the follower count or whatever you want to call it count go up. Same thing with this channel as well. Like, if you like what you're hearing, hit the thumbs up button. If you really like it, hit the subscribe button. I always forget to say that. I feel like we're all adults here, or most of us are. I'm assuming most of the people listening to this are adults. If you're not an adult, pretend you are, hit the subscribe button and just feel grown up about yourself. It'd be good. Outside of that, I would love to have anybody who really wants to support the channel do that. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can do what we just talked about, hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, follow the Instagram and the Facebook. And that's the easiest way. It's like super cheap. It's free, actually. But if you have some money just burning a hole in your pocket, you don't have anything else better to do, you can swing by the B1KER website and hit the little shop link, and you can pick up some swag like this hat I'm wearing, or the shirts that you see me wearing, or whatever you're into. Like this cup. I have this tumbler here. It's got keeps not one, but two 12-ounce beers and then some cold. So I feel like that's a must, because it's about to get stupid hot around here. And I don't know if it is where you are, but even if it isn't, just get the mug. It'll be awesome. You'll be happy with yourself. Outside of that, there's people already supporting the channel on Patreon. And that is really what keeps the channel afloat and keeps paying for cool microphones and cameras and whatever else it is, beer for the background, because obviously I'm not drinking enough of it lately, but that stuff really helps. And what I've been doing on Patreon lately is I've been putting together videos that are kind of like my original ones back on the B1KER channel, like quick cuts of me riding, and not all fancy with the music and the drone shots and the B-roll, but just me cussing and bitching about climbing and having a good time and laughing on trails. And I'm releasing that only for the happy hour crew. So that's the $5 a month crew. So if you want to see more consistent trail POV kind of old school footage, go ahead and swing by Patreon, join that happy hour crew. It's $5 a month. And if you just want to throw me a tip, like a tip jar, join the $1 one, and that'll get you access to the coupon codes that we have. And that is me, the coupon. I guess it's everybody on Patreon. And you can get coupons for some of the companies that have worked with us and set us up something special. So that's pretty cool. If you're looking for building a new wheel set, you could get a 20% off of Project 321. And that's for $12 a year. I think that'll definitely pay for about, I don't know, 1 billion years of Patreon or something like that. I'm not very good at math. So anyways, let's go ahead and get these guys on and get started and bring them up here. I'm going to hit this button because I always forget to. There we go. What's up? We got Adam and Chris here from Revel. Those of you guys that are watching, Adam's on the left, Chris is on the right, and I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves. Adam, if you want to say hello, that way the people on the podcast kind of know which voice is which.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Adam Miller, founder of Revel Bikes and Why Cycles, and I'm sure I'll talk a whole lot more about all that in a few minutes. Yeah. And this is Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris Reichel. I am, I think, technically the marketing director, but my official title here is director of Stoke.
Oh, there you go. I do the directing of Stoke as well, so that's a fun job.
It's much more fun than marketing. That gets kind of boring sometimes.
Right, exactly. Well, that's cool. So I guess we go ahead and just start off with that, since you're both wearing the opposite shirts here. I don't know if you planned that on purpose today.
We actually literally we were just saying, like, wow, we didn't even plan these shirts. Like I was skiing. It was the Highlands closing day today, so I was outside in the sun, so I'm all sunburned. But I got down here, and then Chris was already at the computer working here on a Sunday night, which is, I guess, springtime in the bike industry. And I said, oh, we got this podcast coming up, and we just happen to be wearing a shirt for each brand that we sell here. So
right on,
not planned, but it worked out great.
No, that's super cool. So for people that don't know, could you, Adam, give us a little like who is Revel? What do you guys do?
Yeah. So, and that was a nice quiet sound of Chris popping a beer there. So,
hey, it's the biker bar, man. Somebody's got to be drinking.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Cheers, y'all.
Yeah. So I started Revel Bikes and Why Cycles. We're two brands in one business, one building. Everything's the same, but we have two different product lines. So Revel Bikes makes high-end carbon fiber, full suspension mountain bikes. We launched with two models in March 1 of 2019. So just over 2 years ago. We just had our 2-year birthday. It was a lot more mellow than the 1-year birthday before COVID times. But so we're a relatively new bike company. We launched a third model last summer, a few more models in the works, but the goal is to make the best carbon full suspension mountain bikes.
Right on. And Chris, maybe you could explain why, since you got the Why Cycle shirt on.
Why was just Adam's idea of making titanium bikes, which have traditionally been kind of stuffy yet aesthetically pleasing, but given the modern geometry and modern bells and whistles and tubing shapes, basically taking all the shaping and tubing design and industrial design of carbon, but applying that to titanium and making like beautiful swoopy bikes. And who doesn't love a titanium hardtail? They're badass.
Yeah. So. Yeah, those things look sweet. I was checking it out on the website, and I was I'm like such a fickle person, and I'm definitely like one of those guys that like I'll choose a bike off of like what color it is, right?
You're in good company. I mean,
right.
we like colorful bikes,
right? So like the gravel bike that I have right now, I'm just not happy with the paint scheme, and I'm too lazy to take it apart and just get it painted. I'm like, oh, this seems like a much more reasonable like option to just go buy a new one. And so I was checking out the gravel bike that you guys had on there. I was like, oh, it looks pretty sweet.
Yep, you know a couple guys.
So what's the deal with titanium? Why is that like the creme de la creme, it seems like, with specialty bikes?
Yeah, titanium has always been this kind of unique, awesome material that has this sort of like allure to it, and it's been used for bikes for for ages, since well before carbon fiber. But that's kind of one thing that sets us apart is we're kind of a building full of bike nerds right now. I think we have 19 people at our company for Revel and Why. And Why Cycles it's a much smaller company. It's kind of more the artistic, handmade products. We do like hand-drawn graphics and artwork and everything on those bikes. And then Revel Bikes is a little bit more mainstream, still small niche brand, but a little bit more mainstream. But I started both brands at the same time, but it took about 3.5-4 years to get the Revel products ready to launch. Whereas making hardtail titanium bikes was a whole lot quicker. So I've just, from when I was a little kid, I always kind of was a bike geek, and titanium bikes it's always been the creme de la creme. It's kind of this magic metal. The thing that makes titanium bikes really special is the ride quality. So titanium's really flexible and has a lot of damping in the material. So when you hit a rock in the trail or a crack in the road, the titanium frame is going to flex and then make the ride feel a lot smoother than a steel bike or an aluminum bike. Carbon can achieve that, but if you have really good carbon, you can achieve that. A lot of carbon is still very stiff ride quality. So really, titanium is nice and smooth and comfortable, and then it's just artistic at the same time. So for Why Cycles, we have 5 models. We do a couple hardtails, some bike packing bikes, and then our gravel bike that you were mentioning is definitely one of our most popular bikes, just because Ty is so smooth and comfortable. And then what we do to make it special is shape those tubes so that we optimize that lateral stiffness and vertical compliance. So what we say is we kind of do a modern take on traditional titanium, and it seems to work well. And it's kind of artistic outlet a little bit more so because we can make a lot of new models faster. We have a ISO certified test lab at our factory, so we can kind of we can develop products really quickly for Y Cycles. And then Revel takes, there's a lot that goes on for a full suspension carbon bike. So that's a little slower to develop products, but obviously, if I had to pick one bike every day to ride, it would be Revel carbon full suspension bike. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. Were you guys remember Interbike? That used to be like the big deal, right?
Something like that. It was like a ghost town, right?
Right. Did you guys go to the last one that was in Reno?
early.
When I went to, did you guys have a booth?
No, we seeing the trend of Interbike, we decided that year to not get a booth. A couple of us just went to kind of kick around and shake some hands. And
Okay.
I was
yeah, there was. I was crazy. There were so many there that year. There was a company that had a bunch of Thai bikes that I remember seeing on the floor, but I wasn't sure if it was you guys or not. So who knows? Those guys are obviously long gone by now, right? Wasting their money on Interbike. Duh.
Don't need to do that.
Right.
Well, I do miss Interbike. There were some really fun times at Interbike. I've gone like 8 years in a row and really enjoyed it. Oh, well.
Yeah, unfortunately, the first one that I went to was the last one that they had. I heard that the ones back in the day were a lot more fun. So,
yep.
Yeah, we made the best of it. I mean, but it definitely didn't stack up to some of the stories I heard about that place. So,
yeah, makes sense.
So I was on your website and I saw that that apparently you were an entrepreneur from a young age, huh? It said that you were buying bikes when you were 11 years old on eBay or something like that, taking them apart and selling the parts or something.
Yeah. So Chris has encouraged me to tell the story of my bike nerd past a little bit more. So, So I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and was a total bike nerd. And I was lucky enough, my parents put me in a free kids bike program when I was like 10, and 2 days a week you went mountain biking, and I got just absolutely hooked immediately. I played hockey and basketball and other sports, and none of those I wasn't very good at all those, but mountain biking seemed to kind of work out for me. So I kind of was a bike nerd and became a business nerd at kind of a similar time. So when I was 11, I got a PayPal account, and I would buy used bikes on eBay, which was super popular at the time, and then pull the bikes apart and sell the wheels and the brakes and the derailleurs and all the parts separately, and pedal my bike down to the post office with a bunch of little boxes and ship it all out. And I actually made pretty good money at that. And then I expanded that business over the years to kind of do consignment sales for people, community, and that worked out very well for me. So I learned a whole lot about just tons of different bike parts and how.
What made you want to do that at 11? That was just like, you're like, this is a way that I think I can make money. I mean, that's pretty like big endeavor for somebody that young,
Yeah, and when my parents saw that I had a PayPal account, they freaked out because back then, sending money through the internet was kind of a scary.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for that, but I just had fun with it. It was neat to see all the different parts and all the different technology and see what people wanted. And for me as a kid, it was a way to, before I could drive, I could get on my bike and go explore the mountains in Alaska, and I was just totally hooked. So and then I was lucky enough to get a job at the local bike shop when I was 14, and that's a similar story to what a lot of us in the bike industry have had. And being 14 years old, working at a bike shop with a bunch of really cool dudes, and sometimes I was able to sneak a classy beer after work and all that good stuff. It was just a good way to kind of learn everything.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So did you you worked in bike shops along the years and then decided to start your own bike company, or how did you go from, being somebody that I'm assuming is like wrenching on bikes or helping sell bikes to like, hey, I'm going to manufacture my own?
Yeah. I got really lucky. So I worked at a bike shop called Chain Reaction Cycles in Anchorage, and in Alaska, it is cold and dark for half the year, and it snows a lot. So in Alaska, I started working in that shop in 2007, and fat bikes were just becoming a really popular thing up there, because if you're into biking, there's snow on the ground 6 or 7 months a year. You just ride fat bikes up there.
Right.
And the two owners of the bike shop, Jamie and Bill, were awesome. They taught me so much stuff, and they decided to start manufacturing their own fat bikes just to sell in their shop. In 2008 or 9, I believe. And I thought that was like the coolest thing, that you could have this idea to make a bike, a new kind of bike, source it. They started making them in Oregon, and then we're making them in Taiwan. And they just shared a lot of that with me, of that whole process of kind of have this idea and figure out how to make this into a product and then sell it. So I worked at that shop for a couple of years, as they were, the brand is called 907, named after the area code of Alaska. And Jamie and Bill just taught me a lot and were nice enough to kind of bring me into a lot of these conversations. And then in 2010, I moved to Colorado Springs to go to college at Colorado College. And when I was leaving Alaska, I said to the to bike shop owners and 907 owners, hey, can I take one of these bikes down and maybe I could try to sell it to some other bike shops in Colorado? And they kind of said, oh, sure. It seems like a good idea.
Right.
And I walked into bike shops in Colorado with a aluminum fat bike, and I got laughed at more times than I didn't. Like, people thought I was walking in with like a recumbent bike to try to sell them or something. And
just wasn't something that grabbed people's attention, huh?
Fat bikes were really, I mean, they're still on the fringe of the whole bike industry, but in 2010, people in Colorado didn't want to even see a fat bike.
Which is funny because like there's a lot of snow there too. So
yeah. It was weird to see the reaction of people. And that was a good lesson in, hey, different geographies want different types of products. And that's totally fair. It was nice when the next year those same bike shops called me back to say, hey, we actually do want some of those bikes. And that's what really kicked off my whole bike business design career, was being able to see it from these other people. So I saw that and then thought, you know what, I really want to do this myself. And I think the world needs a carbon fat bike. And I think myself and a few other companies at the time were probably had similar ideas. I was lucky enough that I started a business in 2012 is when I started it, called Borealis Fat Bikes. And we launched at Interbike back when it was in Vegas.
Oh, there you go.
In 2013 with a carbon fat bike, and that just really kicked things off. Like, we hit the market when people were much more accepting of fat bikes, and we showed off like a 21-pound carbon fat bike, and the rest is history. I've just been,
people were stoked.
Yeah.
I know a buddy of mine. He just picked up a full suspension fat bike now that he's like using. And in my mind, I thought they were always going to be hardtails. I was like, wow, you're not going to need suspension, and apparently you do.
No, every anything you can imagine, I think, is being made right now, and for good reasons. I mean, Borealis, I started that brand. I was actually in college at the time, and I figured it'd be kind of a hobby while I was in college. I thought we budgeted around everything. I thought I'd sell 50 bikes in the first year, and I would just kind of work on it after hours and stuff. And launched it sent out one press release to bikerumor.com, and I had my personal cell phone number on there. And within like 2 or 3 hours, we had sold 50 bikes. And I was kind of like, oh damn, we have a real business now.
Yeah.
And then it was actually only like a few weeks after that Chris reached out to me, and I'd never met him before, but he was doing a trip to Iceland, and
I heard through the grapevine that there was this guy who launched these carbon fiber fat bikes as his like senior project in college, and I was like, whoa, carbon fat bike. I was doing a lot of adventure air quote style ride with my friends in the desert using fat bikes to get around. Navigate big patches of sand and soft trails and whatnot between Arizona and Mexico. And I was like, wow, this would be way better if this bike weighed 10 pounds less. And I had come up with this cockamamie idea to ride north to south across Iceland over 7 days with some of my friends. And so I hit him up to see if he'd want to loan me some bikes. And he was like, yeah, that's crazy. Of course. So we kind of been friends ever since. So yeah, it really worked out. Just a cold call 10 years ago for a weird bike and a weird trip. And and here we are today.
How about you, Chris? What's your background? And like, how do you come into the mix to being the director of Stoke?
Yeah, I made a pivot in my career about 5 years ago. I was actually an industrial chemist and working in corporate America. And
oh wow!
And I was selling stories and writing blogs and making content for all my trips that I was doing, kind of like this ultimate weekend warrior type stuff, where do stupid things like fly to Iceland and try and ride across it.
Right.
And I got to know a lot of really great people in the bike industry on the media side. And I decided to take a year for me. Corporate America really burnt me out. And I was a pretty early adopter of social media, and I still am really into just utilizing those platforms and how it's the way of the future and how it's only growing more and more and more. So I took my scientific brain and kind of applied that to social media marketing and started consulting and doing that. And I ended up freelancing for a little bit and actually ended up at Industry 9. And that's how I found your channel.
Oh, right on.
When you did a review of the Torch Hub, I think. And
yeah, that was my silence the haters one, because everybody would be like, apparently there's like this like a religious thing about loud hubs and quiet hubs.
Yep.
And I didn't really realize that when I started my channel and I had 9.9 hub in my bike, and it's like all these people, like half of them would be like, that's the best hub. What is it? Sounds so good. And then the other half of the people would be like, oh my God, I don't want to watch this. This is the horrible, most worst channel because that hub is so loud and annoying. So I had like called i9 and was like, hey man, I was thinking about just doing this little project to see how to like maybe make it quiet to shut some people up. Right. And they were like, well, you could do this. It'll be quiet for like a little bit.
About 40 hours or so, and you got oil leaking everywhere.
Yeah. So
fucking loud. To be fair, we're still pretty big fans of i9. We spec them on most of our bikes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I got a job kind of just like part-time at i9 doing their social media, and it just grew into eventually being their director of marketing, and crossed paths with Adam again because he was doing Y Cycles at the time and speccing i9 wheels on Y Cycles. So he was like, hey, we should do a business trip. And I'm like, well, maybe we could go to Eurobike and we could ride instead of like flying into industrial wasteland Germany and just like, spinning our gears and wishing we were riding. We could fly into Zurich and spend 3 days riding from Zurich, Switzerland, over to Friedrichshafen, Germany.
Oh, right on.
And this is like Eurobike's like the biggest trade show. Like you went to Interbike, which was a small version of Interbike, but imagine that 2 or 3 times is the normal Interbike. Eurobike, you walk in and it's like 50 times bigger than Interbike. Like it takes days just to walk around all the booths, and like Chris and I have been to all those trade shows so many times, and the first few years you go, it's so fun, and you go out drinking every night, and like you go see all these cool people, and you go out for meals, and you get business deals done at 2 a.m. at bars, and it's just this like magical thing. And after a few years of that, and I was coming out of college too, like I was
you were set to go.
I was great at that stuff, but it starts kind of wearing on you a little bit, and the excitement turns into more just kind of business and work. And so Chris and I were talking, and he had the idea. He said, well, we have to go to Eurobike. Why don't we just ride our bikes there? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. It's way better than the normal.
Well, that area that you just talked about riding, I mean, I've skied down in that area, and it is just freaking beautiful down there. Like unbelievably beautiful.
Stunning.
It's like the sound of music, It's just rolling green hills, especially in late August or early September. It's just stunning.
That's awesome. That must have been just a fantastic trip, And
cool.
To paint the picture too for some of the people that are listening that haven't been to Interbike, it's not just like every bike brand that you can think of, or like clothing brand that has to do with bikes or something like that. There's like 100 booths of people that are just selling like ball bearings, and like, some guy that sells like the circuit board for the e-bikes, and like, it is like, and this is the Interbike that I went to. I mean, they're saying the Eurobike's even bigger. So it was overwhelming to me to even realize that there was that much like other industry surrounding the bikes, instead of just the bike companies themselves. So, and at the Interbike that I was at, they were saying was way scaled down compared to the old ones. And even that one, just as a person, for the first time walking in there and walking around, I was like, holy cow, wow, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, Eurobike is literally 5 airplane hangars.
Wow.
Like it's the old hangars where they used to make blimps in World War II.
Oh, there you go.
Like the blimp museum is right next door.
Right.
So so we get to this crazy industry, everything fest, and Adam's like, oh, let's go to lunch tomorrow. I got something I want to talk to you about. And I'm like, you could have just called me. Like we've been riding for 3 days together. Yeah. And he tells me about how he's got this idea for making carbon fiber mountain bikes with the CBF suspension platform, and how he wanted me to be his marketing guy. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm in. Like,
yeah, right.
no questions asked. Like I knew the power of that Canfield suspension, and I've ridden it. It's rides like nothing else. And the fact that he was, I think you had the licensing already by then, and the fact that he had the licensing for that suspension, I was like, yeah, it's a no brainer. The world.
So let's talk about that. What's the deal with that suspension? Let's go ahead and explain what the CBF is, I guess, to start, and then maybe where it came from and why you chose it.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, and I will say that, it's been a year of COVID and no bike events, so normally I've got the super polished script because I go tell these.
Oh, dude, don't worry about it, man.
So bear with me a little bit, but
no, it's all right.
It's like the weird.
If you look like you're stumbling, I'll just jump right in.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in the bike world, there's a few main suspension systems for full suspension mountain bikes. There's DW Link, VPP, Horse Link, single pivot, and then a whole bunch of variations.
So just to kind of like, for people that aren't super bike knowledgeable, like VPP would be like Santa Cruz, the DW would be
Ibis, Pivot,
right,
a few other.
And then like Giant, I think they're the Horse. Is that what they're using? Or?
Yeah, it's like every company has kind of a name for their suspension system, but they all kind of fit into one of a few categories. So like package, like Giant's like a Maestro suspension, basically Horse Link. So has a similar. Trek has kind of their version, split pivot. They're all fairly similar, but they kind of fit into one of a few different categories. And all that is, and there's a whole bunch of marketing jargon around it, and we do the same. Although I'd like to think we do less marketing fluff than a lot of companies. But every suspension system is just trying to optimize your rear wheel moving up and down over bumps in the trail, and balancing that with your pedal forces and your braking forces. So every patented system or every trademark name or every fancy, 3-letter word out there for bike suspension system is just trying to optimize. It's where all the pivot points are placed. And I guess for those on the video, all these things right here on this bike behind me, if you move all those by a millimeter or two here and there, it totally changes how that rear wheel moves up and down on the trail. So when I decided I wanted to make a carbon full suspension bike brand, I didn't want to just do another bike that was similar to all the other things out there. There's already a few, bikes that use VPP, a few bikes that use DW. I didn't want to just do another one because the world doesn't need that. So I knew,
because then you would just be another company using the same suspension platform with different colors, and you're not really standing out.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. So I was at Interbike one year back. This is all coming full circle. It all comes back to Interbike. So I'm kind of really sad Interbike isn't anymore. But I went to Interbike one year after I'd sold Borealis in 2015. And I wanted to start figuring out what suspension system I was going to use on this bike brand. I didn't have a timeline in mind. I just knew I wanted to make these carbon full suspension bikes. So of all the bikes I rode, I come from kind of a road racing cross country background, which is, sometimes bad to say because I own a carbon mountain bike company now. But I actually did, in high school, I wore spandex and raced a whole lot and really liked going fast and climbing on a bike, which now I like going downhill on a bike more. But all the other suspension systems that were popular out there, I felt that all of them could go uphill a little bit better. All of them sacrifice that pedal efficiency going uphill. So for me, that was a really important part, was I wanted my full suspension bike to go uphill really well. And then a lot of the bikes that did go uphill well, they didn't go downhill as well. So when you grab the brakes, you get some like brake jack or things just kind of felt different, or the rear wheel would hang up. So I couldn't quite put a, exact finger on the pulse of what was going on with all the different bikes, but I just knew that of all the different high-end carbon mountain bikes I rode with those different suspension systems, they just weren't quite exactly what I wanted.
Right. So it's like you're not an engineer, you're just a guy that's ridden a lot of bikes at this point. That's like, I think I want to find one that does both of these things well. Exactly.
I'm not an engineer by any means. I'm lucky to work with engineers who are way smarter than I am. I've spent a whole ton of time in carbon factories in Taiwan and China and Vietnam, so I have a good understanding of all of it. But when it comes to engineering now, that's which is a huge part of how this business works. Is we were able to get just a ton of great people on the team to do all those things that I know how to do. But exactly, I just wanted to make a bike that I knew what I wanted, I just didn't know quite how to get there. So a friend of mine said, hey, you got to go ride these Canfield bikes. They have their own suspension system. And I kind of thought, those are like Red Bull Rampage downhill bikes. That's not the style I'm going for. I want to go uphill. And he said, we're at Interbike, we're at the demo days. There's every single bike you could imagine here to ride. Just go ride them. So thanks Ben for making me do that. And so I went to ride a Canfield bike and I pedaled it like literally 100 yards up the parking lot. And I thought, holy shit, this is it. This is everything that was missing out of all those other bikes. And went on a whole ride at Bootleg Canyon there on a Canfield balance. And I came back and talked to Chris Canfield and said, can I license your suspension? And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, okay, cool. How's that work? And he said, I don't know. Let's talk about it. You tell me.
It's like, you're my people.
Yeah. Like, it's gonna work.
I'm glad you don't know, because I don't know how this works either.
But it was really that really kicked off the whole backbone for Revel Bikes was having the suspension system. And I got on all these like Skype calls with Chris Canfield, and he's just this suspension genius. He's also an incredibly good mountain biker, and he had designed his own bikes for 18 years. Lived in Taiwan, so he was just a great kind of supporter of me in the beginning. And he had started a business when he was really young as well. So we just kind of kicked it off right away, and so we'd sit on these Skype calls for like hours, and he'd do all this math of like, here's the suspension layout you could do, and if you move this pivot point by 2 millimeters, it's going to do this to how the bike pedals uphill, and how if you move this pivot point a little bit over here, then when you brake, it's going to feel really good, it's going to feel really bad. And so we spent hours on these calls kind of laying out. So within the CBF suspension system, there's a little bit of room to play with in there to really optimize it. And it just so happened that this company that made more downhill focused bikes had a system that was incredible at going uphill. So I thought, great, let's take this, let's optimize it for super efficient pedaling, but still have all that good stuff about going downhill. And
did he ever say like why he like chose to do it that way instead of like kind of mimicking some of the other stuff?
He's just the ultimate tinkerer. Like he's evil genius isn't accurate. He's like the happy genius. Like, he's just amazing. Like if he was on this call right now, he'd hijack this and take it for 2 hours and talk to you about pivot points and
Like, that's the crazy thing about bikes. It's like you can look at something on paper and be like, oh, those 2 millimeters on the head tube, that's not what I'm looking for, or that seat tube or is a little taller than what I think, but then you get on a bike and you ride it and it can be so different than what you expected,
That's dead true. I always say, don't even look at geo charts or suspension graphs. And we have all that stuff on our website, of course, but you just got to go ride it, because there's no formula. Like there's so many inputs into how a bike is going to ride that none of those graphs and numbers and charts will work. But you need that to get there.
Yeah.
You just can't buy a bike based off all that.
I just don't have like maybe it in my soul or the time to put into getting the knowledge for it to actually all make sense. So I just like pick one thing and pretend like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, definitely need a 65-degree head tube angle, man.
That's kind of like the first year we launched, we kind of went after you guys, like people like you were like, let's just bring bikes to the people and let's go ride, because it's a really noticeable ride difference. Like, and not even as a marketing guy, as a mountain bike nerd for almost 30 years now. I remember getting on the first prototype that we did, and Snowmass Bike Park is just up the road, and we go every Tuesday night as a crew to go ride. We shut down a little early, and I got on one of the first prototypes, and I was like, do I have a flat tire? Like, what's going on? Like, it was so active braking. Like, I was used to grabbing a handful of brakes at the bike park and having it skitter and skid everywhere, that like when I got on our bike, it just tracked so perfectly. And I was like, holy shit, like, what is wrong with this thing? Did I break it already? Like, I know prototypes don't break, but and now it's just what I come to expect from any bike, but because of ours. And so I love that shit.
Yeah, the first time I heard of you guys, I mean, you guys know Jake from Project 321, the Hubs. He's had one of your Revels for a long time, and every time I'd go and hang out with him, be talking smack about the bike that I'm on, because Jake's just really good at talking smack. So
he really is.
but he'd always be telling me about how much he loved that bike and how good it rode and stuff like that. So and I remember the first time that I saw it, there's a couple of bikes that in pictures don't ever do them justice as they do in person. And I feel like YT and you guys, like every time I've seen one of your bikes in person, I'm always like, man, that thing looks sweet. Like it looks really sweet. And I don't know what it is about that, you know, maybe it's just because like when you're looking at a picture, you're looking at the suspension and there's a lot going on there in the linkage, you know, and maybe that's what it is. But when you're seeing it in person, like at least for me, I think that whatever it is that I was thinking before is doesn't feel the same when I see it.
It's one of the big challenges for me as the marketing guy, trying to get accurate photos of how beautiful the bikes are. It's half gloss and half matte, and that's almost impossible to capture in a photograph. Right. See it in real life, you're like, whoa, what's going on there? You know, and then capturing all the curves and getting all the contrast just right in the photo studio is really challenging. So that's kind of like my goal to be obtained.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, really what we did the whole first year, we launched and we had basically a year before COVID happened, and we just got it on the road with a fleet of demo bikes and let people ride them. And I can get into all the techie stuff behind the CBF suspension system, but really getting people to ride the bikes is the best thing to do. And then, we basically had a year where we don't get people on the bike. So it's kind of a lot more like blind purchases and whatnot. And luckily word of mouth is really good. We've gotten some really good reviews out there. So, customers are loving the bike, but it's been an interesting couple of years of the different types of ways to show off our product. Yeah.
There's a guy, I saw him up in the comments here earlier that, named Semi Sendy. He's got a YouTube channel as well. And he had recently purchased one of your Rascals. And that's where I saw that. I didn't know that you guys had that short travel 29er because I've been toying around with wanting to buy one so I've been like thinking about what bike I'd be interested in. And I saw his video when he did you guys very, very good justice, I think. Like,
yeah, it was a great video.
Yeah, and he had told me though, like off the air or whatever, he's like, I'm not lying, like for a YouTube sake or whatever. He's like, this bike is like one of the best bikes I've ever ridden. So everybody I ever talked to has nothing but like good things to say. So obviously you're pulling something off right there, right?
Well, I think if you want, I can jump into just a little more of the technical stuff with that CBF suspension system.
Yeah, go for it.
The big thing that I think really seems to resonate is a lot of other suspension systems. It basically everything's about your anti-rise and your anti-sag, and those are the technical terms for your pedal forces and your braking forces. And it's really easy to make a suspension system pedal perfectly efficiently when you're on a flat road and you're not using that suspension and the rear wheel isn't moving up and down. As soon as you get into a bumpy trail and you start going over bumps and roots and rocks, then everything changes. And so working with Chris Canfield on our specific version of the CBF layout, we really want to keep that in mind. And that's something that he's really optimized with that system. So everything is about the center of curvature. And I'll try to show you this is just my personal bike hanging up. I had to, put something behind us. So there's not just a white wall, but everything is about a center of curvature right over the top of the chainring. So the drive forces, the chain, are perfectly perpendicular to the axle path at 100% of the travel. And what that means is not just when you're at your 30% sag point, but as you bounce in and out from 10% to 90% to 100% of your suspension travel, your chain is always pulling perfectly on the rear wheel. So all your power goes right into moving that wheel forward.
Because if it got a little bit closer, then your chain would lose some slack and you would lose a little bit of power. And if it overstretched it, then that's bad news for your chain.
And that's exactly. And that's when, on a lot of bikes, you can look down and you can see when you pedal that the suspension moves a little bit. And you have to kind of be careful because some of that is just your body weight changing. But on a lot of bikes, it's the forces into turning that rear wheel around will actually affect your suspension. And that just slows you down and you lose energy. So but the big point is at 100% of the travel. And then the same thing is the anti-rise, your braking characteristics. When you're going down a steep hill and going, on a rock garden, your rear wheel's moving up and down. On a lot of bikes, you grab that brake and it'll kind of buck you over the handlebars or kind of pull you back. And our goal was to have 100% anti-rise at all points of the travel, and we accomplished that on all three of our bikes. So a big thing that people notice, we always say on a demo ride, find a super technical rocky climb and a super technical rocky descent, and see how that bike reacts. And you don't feel it when you grab the brake. It does not affect the suspension, even while the wheel is moving at all points in the travel. So I think that's the key thing is having those good characteristics, but at all points in the suspension travel. And I think that's what really sets our bikes apart from some of the others.
So when you guys first started, you came out with it was like a 29er long travel. Is that what it was? Or
so we launched with two bikes, the Rail, which was 27.5 wheels and 165 millimeters of travel. And then the Rascal, which is this one, 29-inch wheels, 130 rear, 140 front.
Ah, okay. So 140, 130 on and that's the Rascal?
That's the Rascal, yeah.
Okay.
And
then what's the
Ranger, which is 115 and a rear 120 front.
That's the one that the semi-sendy guy. I said Rascal earlier, and then I said the wrong name. So the Ranger is.
We mix them up all the time. It's kind of maybe
yeah.
Greatest naming convention, but a little confusing sometimes.
So, do you guys continue? Like, do you think you'll continue to have a 27.5 and a 29er?
Well, we have we have a lot of new bikes in the works. I mean, when we launched, we sold out of our initial batch in like 3 days. I guess I was pretty bad at judging what the demand would be like, but the bikes were received very well, and we sold them a whole lot faster than we thought. So we've kind of doubled down. We have a really good relationship with our manufacturer. We were able to kind of pick up the pace pretty quickly, but we did definitely kind of get caught with more demand than expected. So we've spent the last year and a half really investing in more and more development. So we're working on some new products, but these bikes are they're incredible. It's funny, our Rails 27.5 wheels, 165 millimeters rear travel, 170 front, and a lot of people hear that and they say, "Oh, I don't want a 27.5 bike, or I don't want that much travel." And
the travel is what shied me away initially, because I was like, man, 170, that's a lot, and in my head, I was like, oh, it's going to be kind of sluggish. And I wish I would have threw a leg over one. I haven't,
We'll get you set up on one, but that's what Jake from Project 321 rides the Rail, and he rides it everywhere. And that's what, every demo event we go to, people would say, I don't want to try that. It's got small wheels. It's got too much travel, because you have these preconceived notions. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, people would come back and say, there's no way that bike has 170 millimeters of travel. Like it goes uphill so well. So, it's kind of funny, because I think the mountain bike industry has these trends and, things that are popular, maybe for valid reasons and maybe not. And the 27.5 or 29-inch wheel thing is definitely one of those in my opinion. Our Rail 27.5 bike is definitely, I'd be lying if I said a lot of people aren't asking us for a 29-inch version of that, and that maybe at some point in the future we very well might make that bike.
Yeah.
I always say, try riding it. You're going to be blown away at how well this bike goes uphill and downhill. It's so playful and poppy. So
I'm personally a fan of the 27.5 wheel. So I just feel like it has a little bit more of a, for lack of a better term, like flickability to it. It's just a little more responsive and in the like techie stuff, especially when you're in like the slow tech, and that's stuff that I personally enjoy riding a lot. And 29ers have definitely come a long way as well. So, but my initial feeling was I always kind of felt like the 29ers picked the lines a little bit more than you did. And so that's why, maybe because I had bike BMX when I was younger or something like that, but the 27.5 just appeals to me. But I definitely will say that as companies, continue to develop the 29er and the frames built around them, and, things are changing, that they're definitely becoming a lot more appealing, so it's getting harder to tell the difference. But if there was a way to ride like a bike blind, you know what I mean? Like
that's
3-4 years ago, I could have definitely told you, yep, that was a 29er. Yep. That was a 27.5, and now you're getting on and you're like, man, that steering's like dialed. That's like pin in the corner, and you're okay. Well, I'm not sure, No,
the blind testing is huge. I always urge people before they ride a bike to, almost not, it's almost better if you don't look at all the specs and the wheel size and the travel and the geometry, because you get an idea in your head and it can kind of skew your opinion. But I mean, I do that, so I who's to say? But the problem with mountain biking is, in a perfect world, all of us would own like 5 or 6 bikes, one for every possible type of riding. So
right. Yeah. I'm just stoked my kids finally are like moving out. So I'm like, sweet. That means your bike comes off the wall and I can ride one.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all have their place. I mean, this bike is my Rascal. This is our 29-inch wheels, mid travel. It is. I hate to overuse the term quiver killer, but it is. If you have to choose one bike, this bike's amazing. It just does everything really well. We have guys who, like Chris said, every Tuesday, Snowmass, 25 minutes up the road, they keep their chairlifts running till the sun goes down, and they have a Tuesday night downhill race, and it's like a $5 entry, really unofficial thing, but there's a lot of really fast people in this area, so we always go up and do those races. And last year there's 6 races. 3 of them were won by one of our guys who does all of our inventory purchasing, Matt, and he was riding the Rascal, and then the other 3 were won by some other people, and some of them were on a rail, some were on a Ranger. Like, the bikes are so capable all around. So this bike can handle full on, like, fast downhill bike park stuff, but it's also great everyday riding bike for long days at above tree line, 12,000 feet around here in Colorado. The rail's super playful, poppy, fun, and then the Ranger is just fast. I mean, 115 mils of travel. It's light, fast, and it also packs a lot more punch than it sounds. So I think all the bikes are kind of surprising in their own way. Obviously, I'm biased, and I can't wait to get back out on the road and show people our bikes and let them actually ride them, because I can say they're great all day long, but it's always better when someone rides. So.
Well, I think Sea Otter is supposed to happen this fall, and judging by the way everything's gone with the vaccines and stuff, I'm assuming that's going to come through, as long as like whatever the next variant of lock the fucking world down doesn't change everything again. So hopefully we can keep our fingers crossed and knock on wood, and that'll happen. And then I think also in the late fall, then you got Sedona as well coming back around. So
those are our 2 events on the calendar right now. Mine with Rome Fest, the ladies mountain bike festival in Sedona, the week before.
Oh, right on.
Festival. So
when is that?
Sea Otter will be our first venture into the world. So.
Yeah. Have you guys done a Sea Otter before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That place is crazy too, man. I mean, that, like, as a consumer, to go in there and just you're like, to me, it's like a little bit of like sensory overload, because it's like so many freaking brands and bikes and things to look at. It's
a trade show. That's kind of what Interbike used to be.
Yeah.
And maybe it added to the demise of Interbike, because you kick off the season with Sea Otter, and it's a full-on trade show. You're making deals, you're having those dinners, but you're also racing, and you're outside in California weather, and everybody's stoked because they're riding around. There's trails to ride. They're not the best trails, but they're still trails.
Yeah.
And, it's like no such thing as bad pizza. Like, and you get to ride at a trade show, which is really novel for us, where we're normally like locked up in a Vegas convention center or something. And airplane hangar in Germany. And so, like, it's really just so fun just to stand, be outside, talk to consumers, and like have the sun hit your face. Like, it's pretty cool. We're a fan. So.
Yeah, it definitely takes a minute of walking around though, until you're like, okay, now I know where I'm at. You're like, I thought I made the right turn over there, but nope, I didn't.
It's been crazy the last couple of years as those traditional trade shows died down. Sea Otter, it's always been huge. I went there to race bikes when I was like 13 years old, and to come back and be there, behind the booth on the business side of the equation and see what's happened to it. It's just incredible. But I mean, the last couple of years we've had journalists from all over the world, from countries that I never even knew were popular for mountain biking. People come there, and it's really become kind of this international business show, as well as just the most fun place. I mean, we go there and plan on basically not sleeping, get up early, get a ride in before the trade show, talk to people all day long, go out for dinners. It's, if anybody has not been to Sea Otter, I highly recommend it for all reasons related to biking.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a lot of fun, and you don't even need to take your bike as a person that's going down there. I mean, when I went last time, I didn't even take a bike, because I just knew how much time I was going to spend just walking around. By the end of the day, it's like, dude, I'm just going to drink beer with everybody else. I'm cool.
Yeah.
You know,
crazy. Like, I at one point I was like chomping on a hot dog watching Danny McCaskill do a show, and then behind me is like a pro road race going around the track. Like, this is crazy. This is like,
yeah, I know. And then for me, I really love the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival. It's just it's like the right amount of people versus vibe versus like beer and music. Like.
Yeah,
I think because there's so much good riding, like right from the fest as well.
We chose it to launch our business for that reason. We actually became Revel at Sedona Mountain Bike Festival. Like, it's just like the right place to show the world our bikes, and then people could read about it on Pink Bike in the morning, and then come to the festival and hop on a bike and ride it. And it was so great. It's that special place for us.
Yeah. It's kind of like the running of the bulls in the morning, though. They open that gate at like 8, and it's whatever 1,000 mountain bikers like sprinting through the fest trying to get to whatever brand it is that they want to ride.
It was pretty awesome. So when we launched at Sedona Fest, it was February 28th of 2019. Chris set all this stuff up, sent out all these press releases about what we'd been doing and the new bikes we were coming out with. And like, I didn't sleep for like weeks leading up to this. I was so nervous about I had invested like every dollar I had plus a whole bunch of other people's money, and I maxed out credit cards. I did the whole thing like where I'd get a Delta credit card with a 70,000 mile airline bonus so that I could use that bonus to go to China to visit our factory to make sure the bikes were all being made right. And so
rob Peter to pay Paul, right?
Exactly. It was a fun time, but real tense. And so everything was leading up to the Sedona Bike Fest, and this article went live about, it was Pink Bike's review of the Revel Rail. It went live like the afternoon, the night before, the next morning, and we were setting up our booth, and it was, and we were camping because like we didn't want to spend money, and I was so nervous about, are people going to like all these bikes? I liked them, but I didn't know if everyone else would. And so Chris said, okay, hey, the Pink Bike article's live. And so I went and found a little tree, step away from setting up the booth, and sat under this tree and was like hiding. And I was like shaking and reading my phone of, the article of the Pink Bike's review of the Rail, because they have such a big voice in the bike world. And if they can make or break a product.
Yeah, definitely.
And I sat there reading it, and the first few sentences were good, and I kind of relaxed. And then the next few were really good. And then, the end of the review said this was like one of their favorite bikes of all time, and they loved it. And how could this brand new small company that no one's ever heard of, come out with such a good bike? And I was just like amazed. And then the next morning we launched, like you said, there's that running of the bulls, and 1,000 mountain bikers, they all ran right past our booth. No one stopped at our booth. And then it was back to that same thing where I was like, damn, no one wants our bikes.
But at the same time, then we're back underneath that same tree trying to figure out why our website keeps crashing. Yeah. And trying to get more, more space on our server, because it was a marketing guy nightmare, because you can't market things if you don't have a website. And it was a really, I'm all triggered. Oh my God, that was so stressful.
PTSD from it.
PTSD for sure. It's been a hell of a ride, man. It's really been amazing. It's emotionally overwhelming sometimes. Wow, we're kind of doing it.
Day 2 at the trade show, there was 100 people in line to ride our bikes. So it was, and since then it's just been a freaking wild ride.
News travels fast, and especially in an environment like that. Some guy, let's just say he did the sprint and he was too slow to get to the Yeti booth in time, right? And he's like, well, I guess I'm gonna go try this other thing, and then he goes and rides it, and he's like, holy shit, dude. He goes and tells all his buddies, you guys need to check this shit out, and that happens quick, especially at Sedona too, because it's small. Yeah. So it's really easy for that word to travel quickly, It
was a good time. We just not just last summer, we came out with a new color Rascal, and it's called the Sedona. It's a Sedona colored bike. So it's kind of a,
it's a little nod. Sign of appreciation to what Sedona's done for us.
Right on, man. That's super cool. I like that. That's a good little tidbit of information to know, So, Adam, you were doing these carbon fat bikes. So is that where you really got to know the carbon industry so that you could make, like, how do you make the decision of where to source your frames at when you're deciding to do Revel?
That's a good question, and probably something we could have a whole 10-hour podcast discussion
Right.
Yeah, I've never had a great answer to that question, because I think there's a lot of different levels to it. But yeah, how do you figure out how to make a carbon bike? Holy hell, that's it took me several years. So I've always liked traveling, and whether anyone likes to admit it or not, the best carbon bikes are made in China. They've been doing it for years. They're incredibly good at it. There's multiple factories there that'll do a very good job at making carbon bikes if you know the right people and if you know how to ask them the right questions. So with Borealis, I decided, hey, let's make a carbon bike. I found did a bunch of internet research and found all these factories, and I was in college at the time and took a little bit of time off and just flew to China for 3 weeks, which is a really long time to be in China. And I just went to 10 different factories, all the different factories I could find. And it was amazing to see some that were really good. And you could tell, hey, there's, I recognize that bike. That's, XYZ brand that you see on the floor of a bike shop.
Yeah.
And then some factories, you're like, whoa, there's a Pinarello and a Cervelo and Zip wheels. And, they're full on knockoffs, like full on fake products with no test labs or anything like that. So I got a pretty good idea there. And I chose one factory to work with at Borealis. And that was a fantastic learning experience. And then through Borealis, I found a lot more factories, and I just made a ton of really great contacts in the industry. A few of the guys from NV Composites, Jason Shears and Joe Stanish, were really, really helpful to me. They were making the absolute best carbon fiber products, wheels specifically in America at the time, and also working overseas in China. And somehow, those guys were just helpful and gave me a lot of contacts. And everything's kind of about who you know, not what you know. And I don't have an engineering degree. I've watched a ton of YouTube videos, pirated SolidWorks to try to learn how to model stuff, and then learn that it's better to hire people that are trained. So when I decided to start Revel, CBF was one part of it, but a major part that isn't really ever talked about is where's it going to be made and how is it going to be made? And that's
because you could have a perfect design, but if you have shitty materials, you're screwed.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh yeah. That kept me awake a whole lot too. We had a good design. We had, fantastic suspension layout. Jeremiah Starkey did a great job on a ton of the mechanical engineering part of it. We did, got really good artwork. We had all those pieces of the puzzle. And then I ended up just spending, for years, I'd fly to Asia once a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, to check in on this. And so I went to a factory that I had some contact with, presented my idea. And, I was pretty young and walking into this factory, and, I've always felt incredibly welcome when I've worked in Asia and China specifically. There's all sorts of bad ideas of what it's like to work there. But if you choose a good factory and they're good people, it's if I didn't have the relationship with our main factory that I did, we wouldn't have Revel Bikes right now. They really rolled out the red carpet for me, a young kid, no engineering degree, with kind of like, hey, here's my idea to make these 2 bikes. Can you help me? And this factory just did an incredible job. And I chose a factory after visiting a lot that they kind of did everything right. They have about 500 workers there. They have a full organic farm on the property. All the workers are fed 3 organic vegetarian meals every day. They have better maternity leave than most places in America. They just kind of do everything right. And they make really high quality products, and they're really willing to work with me. So as I grew and throughout the development process, I had a lot more help. Jeremiah Starkey is their COO and head of engineering, and he really helped working with the factory to kind of improve little processes and techniques here and there. Jason Shears, the original founder of Envy, he came over there with me at one point to help with carbon layups. So really the strong relationship with a good quality factory is just such an important part of making a good bike. And I feel like we really nailed that one and did a great job, and I feel quite lucky about it. But I spent a whole lot of time on airplanes and eating a lot of weird food and drinking a lot of rice flavored liquor, and I can tell stories for hours about all the stuff over there. Fascinating.
So you guys you have one version of your carbon frame. It's not like you have like a Santa Cruz, like here's the cheap version and here's the more lighter expensive version. It's one layup for your frame, right?
Yeah. And Some reasons for that is we're just not that big of a company. So I figured we can only make one. Let's make the best.
Yeah.
There's not a big difference at times between all those. The expensive part for carbon, one of the expensive parts is your mold. There's a big chunk of steel that weighs as much as a car that, presses out the front triangle. And so for a lot of brands, they'll have that one set of molds and then use differing qualities of materials to make those two different levels of carbon. And I just thought that's too confusing. We're in this to make the best bikes. Let's just use one.
Yeah, totally. So the main reason I asked that question, because I really just wanted to lead into, you guys built this bike, it's getting great reviews, and then you decide you're going to do a wheel.
Yep.
What was it that made you feel like you needed to do that? And then if you want to as well, let's go ahead and start there.
Yeah.
Why the wheel?
Why a wheel? Same thing as the bikes. My goal is to make all the bike parts. I like everything on a bike. If we can do something better than another company, we're going to make it. But there's no timeline or urgency there. We're just going to wait till we know we can do it better. It's pretty easy to go make a carbon wheel in China or Taiwan right now, and a lot of companies do it. It's kind of it's pretty easy to go make another carbon wheel. I'll leave it at that. But
yeah.
Wheels are such an important part of the overall ride. Besides a frame, wheels are absolutely the next most important thing you can do. Oh,
there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. This is why we work together well. Only that.
He is the director of Stoke. So for those of you guys that are listening, he's just passing beers over. So
definitely keeps the Stoke.
Right.
So a friend of mine by the name of Joe Stanish, he was one of the main executives at NV Composites. I actually started Why Cycles and Revel Bikes out in Ogden, Utah. I was living there for a little bit. A great place to start a business. I wanted to move to Carbondale, Colorado. That's where we're based now. So when I was living in Ogden, I met Joe, and we kind of had every week we'd sit on his porch and have a beer and talk about making bikes and the bike industry and all this good stuff. And so again, I just feel really lucky to have been able to have so many good people like that helped me out. So when NV sold, Joe left a year or two later, I think, and started working on this new material. He was a composites expert. He worked at RockShox, SRAM, has just loads of experience making things out of not just carbon fiber, but composites. And so through our talks of me telling Joe, hey, I'm working on making these Revel bikes, Joe is kind of saying, well, I'm working on kind of making this other material. And we sort of always had this understanding of, hey, let's make a wheel out of it. And Joe was one of the first people to buy a Revel bike before we even launched. And I thought Joe was just being nice and supporting me and wanted to buy a bike. And his whole family has them now. He has a couple of them. And he's actually an ex-World Cup racer, was sponsored by Santa Cruz back in the 90s. So just really interesting guy, fantastic biker and genius at composites. So when Joe was telling me about this new material they were working on, it really kind of sparked my interest to make a wheel out of it. Again, let's do something a little different and better if we can. And this new material, basically, it's basically a fancy type of thermoplastic on steroids. So carbon fiber, traditional carbon fiber, what all of our bikes are made out of, what all carbon bikes and wheels out there are made of, besides our wheels, is a mix of carbon fiber strands and epoxy. And depending on the blends of those and the types is how you get different grades and levels and stiffnesses and flexibility and all that stuff. Right. This new material that Joe's working on, which is trademarked named Fusion Fiber, is basically, there's no epoxy in there. It's a nylon PA6 is the bonding agent. And nylon, if you think about it, is basically a fancy plastic, and plastic is flexible. So traditional carbon wheels that are made with carbon and epoxy, think of epoxy. It's the same stuff you use, glue for anything around the house. When it dries, it's very brittle and you can crack it in half. So a lot of traditional thermoset carbon, which is traditional carbon fiber wheels, are fairly brittle. When you smack into a rock, they'll break and a crack can really propagate. This fusion fiber material has no epoxy in it, and the bonding agent is a flexible plastic. So it kind of, the main thing is it's a really good ride quality. It kind of dampens the ride on a kind of, millimeter level. The wheel will flex up and down just a little bit. Can you change the way that flexes, like by layups, or like you can with regular carbon?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you can make it super stiff, or you can make it a noodle, like anything you want in between.
And it's generally it's a stronger material, all else being equal than carbon fiber, and you can build a stronger wheel with it. So we started riding these prototypes and we were really excited about the ride quality. And then through these conversations with Joe early on, before we were, fully in it, he said, and by the way, this material is completely recyclable. I was like, what? Like actually recyclable? And like, yeah, you chip it up and remake it into something else. And so that's when we kind of went full gas and thought, this is going to be the future. Let's make these wheels and let's prove that they're truly recyclable, because part of what we want to do is, be a little bit more environmentally friendly everywhere we can. Traditional carbon fiber manufacturing is not the greatest thing for the environment. And I say that, we still make traditional carbon fiber bikes.
Right.
And we work with a factory that upholds very high standards for cleanliness and all that good stuff. But if there's something we can do to be a little bit better than everyone else and make the world a better place, we're going to do it. So after we launched these wheels, we actually came out with our very first product made out of the recycled material scrap and broken Tesla wheels and all that stuff, which was a tire lever.
Cool.
The product is actually recyclable. So for us, we have a lifetime warranty on the wheels. If the customer breaks the wheel while riding, which carbon wheels will break. People smash rocks real hard. We 100% covered, and we get that wheel back. We take that rim, we peel the vinyl decals off, we send it through this big old chipper, and we get all this little chipped up thermal fusion fiber material, melt it down, and then it can be turned into all sorts of other stuff. So we're just starting to really work on that one step at a time.
That's really cool.
We're really proud of that.
It's really cool. Like there's no reason, it feels really good. There's no reason that this rim ever has to see a landfill. Like you send it back to us, it's going to get constantly turned into something else, and that feels real good, because there's a lot of carbon fiber rims in landfills right now.
So you ship that product back to China and then they re-engineer it, or you guys do it to, like, you guys are making the levers there in Colorado?
It's actually, the factory is based in southern Utah, so it's about 4 hours away from us.
Okay.
Carbondale. Everything's made in America, which is pretty neat. I don't have to stay up late at night talking to factories in a different time zone, and they do a great job. So we have to drive right past Moab to get to the factory, so it's pretty neat place.
Right on. I'm interested to see how you react to this. As soon as I heard of that product that you guys are building the wheel out of, I was like, why aren't they building a frame?
Very understandable.
To start with this new material, what's the hardest thing to make? The rim, and so we figured we'd start there. That's where literally where the rubber meets the road, and the tolerances are so tight and the impacts are so strong. So it was a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Because it's lighter than carbon, right?
So the material weighs the same, but because it can be made to be stronger, then you can technically make a product that is lighter than carbon because it's stronger. So
Right.
That gets into engineering speak of The quick answer is yes, it's lighter than carbon.
Yeah. So the short answer of whether or not I get the yes or the no, I would assume that this is going to happen in the future by somebody. Somebody's going to use this product and make a frame out of it.
It's definitely a new type of manufacturing process. The material is one thing, but the process is really cool. It takes like 20 seconds to cure a rim instead of 45 minutes like traditional carbon fiber. So just the energy and resources used to make the product is quite a bit less. So that has quite a big environmental impact as well. But companies like Airbus, or the Airbus wing of the future, is made out of a similar type of material. It's definitely a new type of material that our whole world is going to see for everything, aerospace. It's pretty neat to walk around the factory where these wheels are made and see products made for things that are a whole lot more technical than just.
So I think the marketing kind of spin that I heard on the wheels, whenever people talked to me about them, they were just like that they had a little give in them, and because of that, it made the ride quality a lot better. But you didn't lose that rigidity that you're used to with the carbon wheel set. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah,
that's a really good way to boil it down. The ride quality is fantastic. It's a nice, quiet, damped ride. It's not so much, big movement, but it's just kind of a small level. Just instead of getting a real brittle, crack when you pop a rock, it just kind of quiets the whole ride down. And one thing we really take pride in is having quiet riding bikes. All the cable routing is that's not just a loose cable in the frame that can rattle or a loose hose.
Mhm.
It's molded into the inside of the frame. And so we try to do all these things to make the bikes just nice and quiet and high quality feeling. And the wheels definitely add to that. And the wheels can go on our bikes or any bike. We sell them aftermarket, rim only, complete wheels. It's a nice riding wheel. It's very durable. We have a fantastic warranty process which most carbon wheel brands do, because carbon wheels sometimes have, people smack them. But the neat thing about that is that wheel will then never see a landfill. It will get turned into another product.
And you make a 29er, a 27.5. Do you make a gravel wheel too, or? We
make we have currently one model of wheel called the Revel RW30. So 30 mil rim. We have it in 29 inch and 27.5 inch. And this is live, but on Tuesday we'll be coming out with another product in that lineup of wheels.
So keep your eyes open then, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's exciting.
It is pretty exciting. That's why I'm working on a Sunday.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We don't just
I was using
here.
I went down to Sedona for the same time that the fest would have been, and so I did some riding there, and then I recently did a video, and I was going through looking for some B-roll for what I was putting together, and I had actually had film of your wheels. I was taking some stuff of whenever you guys were showing that at Sedona last year. Not this year, but the year before. I think that was like right when you launched the wheels, was right around then.
Yeah.
So.
And we were actually in Sedona at that same time too. We figured
we probably saw you on the trail.
Probably right.
We figured if there wasn't a festival, we should probably be there and just to honor our birthday as a company.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of how we were. It's like, well, things are chilled out enough that we can go and feel safe about going and still have a good time. And I don't know. I really like riding down there.
Yep.
One of my friends, another content creator, he lives down there, and he was saying, it's like his favorite place. And I would say that I wouldn't want to ride there all the time, but it's definitely fun to go whenever you go for the fest and stuff like that. It's very different than what I'm used to riding here, which I would imagine is kind of closer to what you guys do, where it's like big long climbs, big long descents, and there it's just like, we make a joke. It's like, you climb down the downhill in Arizona.
Yeah.
Climbing down.
I lived most of my adult life in Arizona, and so I'm pretty partial to the state, and that's kind of why one of the underlying reasons why I swayed the launch to my home turf. But, but
it didn't take much convincing. I really like
it. Arizona is so incredibly diverse. I have a little cabin down by the Mexico border, and the riding down there is so completely different than even Phoenix or Tucson or Sedona or Flagstaff. And there's really it's kind of like the ultimate bike testing ground. If you just had to take one state, you can pretty much hit everything except for a lot of mud. But you gotta wait long enough to get mud. But
my son was joined the military, and he was in school down in southern Arizona. I was down that way. It's pretty crazy looking down there, I can imagine.
Yeah, I'm actually really close to that.
Yeah, okay.
School area. Yeah.
Right
So
on.
it's we call them Sedona miles, because like you get done with that ride and you're like, man, that was a really great 40-mile ride. Then you look at your computer and you're like, 12. Like,
yeah, I definitely know the feeling. There's a place like that locally that we ride, and it's like you're in like an hour or whatever, and you're like, man, I'm feeling like freaking dusted already. And you look at your Garmin and you're like 2.5 miles, and you're like, this is ridiculous, man.
I
definitely feel the same way whenever I'm in Sedona.
Mileage is depressing sometimes.
Right. So actually, I just saw a really good question pop up here from the people in the comments, and they're asking, is Revel Bikes available in Europe?
Yeah, this has been one of the coolest things for us. Again, started this brand launched it at Sedona, camping in the trade show parking lot in my van, and the goal is, of course, that eventually these bikes will be available worldwide. But it was a matter of months, and we were getting hit up by distributors all over the world to sell our bikes. So yeah, now very proud to say we have a very strong distribution in most major countries in the world. So depending on where you are in Europe, there should be a bike shop or a distributor. We have a strong distributor in the UK called Cyclerize, great bike shop in Norway called Cycle. There was a really rough business trip. We had to go to Oslo and ride bikes all over that city.
Yeah, right.
to visit those guys. Can't wait to get back.
Just so you know, there's shuttle runs in the middle of Oslo, Norway, that you take the commuter train to access.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Incredible place to ride bikes.
Norway is another very beautiful country. I've been up in the Arctic Circle there, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's insane.
Super fun. So yeah, you can, if you go on our website, revelbikes.com, click on the how to buy tab. Based on which country you're in Europe, there should be a place to buy that bike. There's all sorts of tax laws that I'm learning every day, where certain countries it's easy to buy a bike from, certain countries it isn't. But go on that website. If you don't see it listed there, you can just send us a email on that contact form. We have a WhatsApp on there as well. Send us a text message, and we will let you know how you can get a bike in Europe. But the short answer is absolutely, you will be able to get one, whether it's from us or from a distributor.
Right on, man. What how has the COVID situation affected you guys I mean, you're talking about launching new products and like ramping up on how many bikes you're selling. Meanwhile, it's like, go to the bike shop and they'll get you a new one. 2022.
I wondered if you were going to ask about COVID.
What a crazy summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Probably a few more beers are drank here to figure out those challenges than in a normal year. Yeah, COVID's been bizarre for the bike world. I feel extremely lucky. Obviously, a lot of businesses have had a very hard time during COVID. And I think most of the outdoor industry, and specifically the bike industry, has in general been on the lucky side of all that, as more people want to get outside. However, we've seen a higher demand because of COVID, but our brand was already growing like crazy. We couldn't keep up with orders, couldn't keep up with demand. COVID hit for about 2 weeks in there. I thought we were going to go out of business and have to lay everyone off. And then about 2 weeks later, everything came right back, and I feel very lucky. But the main thing that's happened is the supply chain has just been absolutely ravaged. Factories in Asia our factory is fairly rural. It's far from cities. So our factory itself has been not too affected by COVID, but they have to buy raw material from tons of different factories, raw carbon, bearings, bolts, paint, decals. Every little, factory that had a COVID outbreak was shut down for a few weeks, if not more. So the supply just got really slowed down. At the same time that in general, the bike industry saw higher demand. A lot of that higher demand within the bike industry was for lower end bikes, or more entry level bikes, I should say, as consumers maybe in New York City said, well, I can't take a subway, so I'm going to go buy a $500 bike to ride around.
Right.
But a lot of those components on those bikes are made in the same factories that components are made in that go on our, $5,000 to $10,000 bikes. So in general, supply has been very, very challenging. And at the same time as our demand is just booming. So it's pretty rough right now. I just feel bad. People will call and ask for a bike, and like a GX Complete bike, we can't ship oftentimes till September or October of this year. That's really bad. And that's, I hate having to give people that bad news that you can't celebrate new bike day soon. But it's people almost say, well, that's actually better than a lot of other of your competitor brands. So the standards are, in general, it's tough to get a bike this year. We're doing everything we can to move that up and to try to get more parts and more frames. We're actually pretty good on our frame manufacturing. It's just a matter of getting, shocks and forks and derailleurs and all that stuff to make a complete bike, to ship that bike out the door. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I know I was listening to a little interview with I think the CEO of Santa Cruz, and he was saying, like, even at one point they got pushed back even farther because they had bikes that they could sell or they could, ship or whatever, but then they couldn't get cardboard to put them in.
Yep.
It was like something that small where you didn't I didn't even think about it. It's like, oh crap. It's like, okay, yeah, they got all the parts and now can't even put in a box.
I've heard rumors of thousands of bikes waiting for chains or seat collars, like the most little tiny things, but they're every piece is important to the bike.
Yeah. It's definitely been interesting too, because just trying to get whatever you need to be, to continue riding. I had a hell of a time finding brake pads recently, where it was like, whenever I finally found some, then I got like that hoarder kind of mentality. I'm like, I'm buying another set, man, because I don't know how long this is going to go on. And
That's like you should totally buy another set of brake pads. I've been doing the same thing for all my personal spare parts, and I'm riding on tires that I would definitely replace if it was easy for me to buy another set of tires.
Right.
I think a little bit it was kind of like the toilet paper mentality when COVID first hit. And I think that's kind of making the supply problem worse. And I'm really hoping a ton of people out there and a ton of businesses are buying more than what they need. And then we're going to see some things start to improve sooner rather than later. Because it's weird out there. That podcast with Joe Graney from Santa Cruz is fantastic. He's a great guy. His descriptions of the supply chain issues were very accurate in what we're seeing as well. You know, on one hand, it's I think in the long term, it's going to really help for sure our business and probably the whole bike industry. I feel like our business has grown, 10 years worth in the last 6 months. And we have a fantastic team of people here that have, we implemented a whole super fancy ERP software system. We're planning out purchases for years in advance. We're doing all this planning and analytics and really taking this, big business approach to a smaller business problem. And I think in the long term, this short-term supply crunch is going to help us out and we're all going to do better, but we just got to get through these next few months.
I was reading this thing the other day. I thought was pretty interesting too, where they did talk about the surge in the entry level bikes. And, a lot of people, to them, that was to somebody that doesn't ride mountain bikes, like spending $1,000 on a bike is a significant purchase. Where like us that are into like already into the addiction, we're like $1,000. What are you thinking?
Real.
Right. But those people, I mean, there's a lot of them that bought a bike just because of COVID, and maybe whenever their gym opens back up or whatever, that their bike just sits in the garage and collects dust, or all of a sudden you see a big surge on like Pink Bike and Facebook Marketplace, people selling them. But on the other hand, there is going to be a certain percentage of all those new riders that now have the upgrade-itis that we all get, right?
Yep.
So that's going to play into 2022 as well, where it's like these guys that bought the $1,000 bike or the old used bike from somebody else, and now next year they're like, hey, I want this new geometry because the bike I bought is 8 years old and I didn't know that things changed. You know what I mean? So I think that as much as I would really like to think that 2022 is going to be just amazing and there's going to be like bikes falling out of the sky, like I am personally coming into it a little more cynical, thinking like, man, it's going to be a rough year next year too.
I think everything you said is so exactly right. I mean, it happened to all of us, probably everybody here listening. Their first bike was $1,000 bike or $500 bike, and then pretty quick you get addicted. Some people don't. Those bikes get dusty, they'll go back to the gym, but probably a good portion of them are going to want to upgrade their bike and buy something new. And so we're definitely expecting demand to be very strong. What I'm hoping and what we're seeing is that hopefully in 2022 the supply problems get better. So right now we have this high demand and really bad supply and really uncertain supply. Bad supply is one thing because you can plan for it. You can say, well, we're going to get X number of units every month, and so we can tell our customers, here's the date you're going to get your bike. Right now we have factories that say we're going to get you this many units, and then let's just say that there's a COVID outbreak at the shipping company, or maybe not even COVID, but there's a new tax law.
Some stupid freaking boat driver can't park in the Suez Canal.
There's always unknowns, but this year there's just so many unknowns and so many things that change. So I think at least going into 2022, hopefully, COVID's less of a thing, and we're at least going to be able to plan better, and that supply should be more reliable. At least I'm an optimist when it comes to that, because I have to be, but I think it's going to get better. I think a lot of new people are going to want to get bikes, but hopefully we'll be able to deliver them a whole lot quicker.
Right on. What was the inspiration for calling the company Revel?
That's a good question. So Jeremiah Starkey, who's our COO and head engineer, he also used to live in Ogden, Utah with me. We both lived there for just a couple of years. He was over at my house having beers one night, and we were just talking about this brand that I was going to start before he was officially on board. And he said, do you have a name yet? And I said, no, all this other shit to do before I come up with a name.
Right.
And he said, well, have you thought of, what do you think about Revel? And my head exploded, because like a year before that for Borealis, I had all these lists of names that I'd keep for like new potential bike model names. And Revel was like at the top of the list. It's just Revel means like living in the moment, enjoying the moment, having fun, you know, revel in the chaos. Like it's just kind of it's all about the moment, which is I think what mountain biking is all about. And the second you said that, I said done, went and got the trademark, paid a bunch of money for a website. Not too crazy of a story, but it just kind of, as soon as you said that name, I thought that's absolutely the one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Same thing with why, just you were like, why not?
Literally, it's kind of why not? Why would you make titanium bikes? There's all this other modern material. You know, it's kind of, I think, a fun sort of marketing challenge for us, you know, to name a company the word why. Chris has had a good time with Google AdWords on that one. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just, you know, Why Cycles products aren't ever meant to be mainstream. They're unique, they're different, they're fun, they're artistic, they're handmade. Every bike has a different laser etch quote on the chainstay, kind of like inspirational quotes. So we just kind of get kind of creative and artistic there. So we thought, why not give it just a name like Why?
Yeah, no, that's super fun. I enjoy it personally. So I really like the look of the Revel logo and the way that the font is and stuff. And I'm not sure if everybody really cares about that stuff, but it's something that catches my eye. Like when I first saw Evil, it was like, man, that font is sick. Like it just looks cool. It's like Envy, you know, like when their stuff came out, you're like, oh wow, that looks neat, you know, like it makes you want to have it, you know.
You're trying and you care, right? Like
right.
Yeah.
So what are you guys excited about with the with the bikes?
Riding them now. It's funny. We're all like, you know, sunburned and stuff. It's so we live in Carbondale, which is a town kind of in between Grand Junction and Aspen for those that don't know, but it's a town with a whole lot of winter. And I grew up in Alaska, so I love snow and I love skiing. And recently this year I got into snowmobiling. Chris, not a big fan of skiing. He's more into Arizona time.
Oh, that's funny.
But so just in the last week, we've kind of shifted from full on snow where you can't ride any trails. We have to drive down to Grand Junction to ride to our local trail. There's about 5 miles of drive trails right now, which is enough to like all of us have been going out at lunch. Like a few people in the shop here. Last week, the first day the trails were dry last week. Like I got a lunch ride in and then went out again at 6 p.m. after work and like saw like 4 people that I work with out on the trail too. Yeah, so like what are we excited about? It's just freaking riding them. It's finally sunny and warm out. So long term, it's just, I mean, we probably have different answers. I you know, it's been a stressful year. It's been tough for everybody, I think. Again, our business is going very well, but it's been tough to manage all these supply challenges. I'm excited to get back out there in person, go to Sea Otter, go to Sedona Fest. It's really empowering to kind of see the smiles on people's faces when they come back from a demo ride. I love New Bike Day. I like riding bikes myself. It's cool to kind of share that and share good bikes with
Do you guys have a guy doing like demo van driving around the country? Like
you're looking at him.
we'll go out on big pulls, you know, and like, you know, just hit it hard for like a month. And one of us will be driving, the other one will fly in, depending on who's busier, you know, and just try and just put as many butts on bikes and ride with as many people. Like personally, like this is a favorite part of my job. I love going to every city in the country and seeing everybody's after work local trails and having to rip my legs off because they know where every rock is and they know where every jump is. And I just love it so much. And to be able to call that work, it's just really freaking cool. So.
Yeah, for sure. You guys were talking about the snow and stuff, and it's like being a Northern California guy, it's like you forget that other people in the country or the world are like not able to ride.
Yeah.
You know, it's like for us, we're like, oh yeah, well it's ski season, but I mean it's ski season if you drive to Tahoe. It's like still getting your boat season if you come back down the hill, you know.
We actually just officially, we put it in our employee handbook as our business is growing. We have a real employee handbook now, but we put in there our official powder day policy. So if it snows more than 6 inches, the snowmass skiers are, anybody can go ski and, you know, make up your time elsewhere or whatever. But we now have a real powder day policy. So, I mean, a lot of us in the building freaking love skiing, and we're lucky to live right down the road from some of the best places to ski in the world.
Yeah, I'd have to get over there and ski. Honestly, I used to be a person that skied all winter and then, you know, road bike in the summer. And I was just as passionate about both of them. And I didn't miss the other one while that season was in play, you know? And I think it's something about, I think it was like when like a lot of guys, I kind of took a little break from biking for a while. And whenever I got back into it, it just so happened to be right around when there was a few kind of shitty years of snow in Tahoe at that time. And it was like, we just rode all winter.
Yep.
So then the next winter when it came around, it was like, well, like right now the weather's like super cool. It's like not super hot. Like why go pay all this money to go ski or like ride up the road and ride my bike? And
you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah,
it's
it's very similar to where I'm at right now, where I've been snowboarding since I was 12, and I'm much older than that now. And and I just this season I was just like, I just really want to ride. That's all I want to do. I want dry dirt every day, and that's all I want. So we kind of focusing all my efforts on that, just staying on the bike.
I had this set of skis that had, like back when parabolics first came out, everybody was like, that's the baddest, most awesome thing or whatever, and I had these like skis that I must have bought in like early 2000s and they were just dated and beat the shit. And like a couple of seasons ago, in my guy mind, it was like a season ago, but in actual time, that's probably like 3 or 4 years, right? And I went out and I was like, I'm buying new skis this year, and I picked up a new set. I used them once, and apparently it's been like 3 seasons that they've been sitting on the wall.
Bikes are fun, man. It's hard to it's hard to leave bikes, especially where you live. I can't if I live in a place like that, I don't think I'd ski.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. And it's like, it's funny too, because like for us, when the snow's in Tahoe, obviously all those trails are a no-go, right? So it kind of gives you this pass, so to speak, to go ride all the stuff that's down at the lower elevation that you ignore all summer because Tahoe's open, So it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll go to demo or I'll go to UC or I'll go to, something else in the Bay Area and ride all these trails that are like really great trails. But, once that snow melts, it's like, okay, I'm going to Downeyville. I'm going to Mount Huff. I'm going to like Tahoe and doing all these like high elevation things. And, the whole summer goes by and you're like, man, I don't feel like I got to do all those trails that I wanted to do at the elevation. And then you think about it, you're like, but I was up there like every weekend. So what else am I like? What's my level of expectation? I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty tough life we all lead, where we have to decide between what incredible sport of skiing or mountain biking at elevation. Right. I feel so lucky, and living here we get to do so much. It was really cool too. Like before COVID, we were traveling all the time. So in January, oftentimes we oh man, we have to go to Los Angeles for a work trip or something, and get to ride bikes. So the coolest thing about owning a bike company is it just gets to go all over the world and ride ride bikes in Oslo on the
commuter train
city commuter train, riding Zurich, riding all over the UK, Australia, and everything like that, and then get to come home and go skiing or drive down the road and go to Moab or whatever. It's not too bad.
Yeah, that's rad. So you said the bike behind you is your personal bike. It looks like you got like a push coil on there.
Yeah, I actually just finished building this thing up. It's a one-off color. We did it's a purple, if you can see. We painted a bike this color to do a raffle last fall for an organization called Love Your Brain. They're a nonprofit that focuses on concussion awareness and treatment, which was pretty close to home for myself, for Chris, for several people here. So we knew we wanted to kind of do a raffle, a give back campaign. So Love Your Brain has their logo colors are this purple. So we made this bike, raffled it. We sold $5 raffle tickets, and we raised $66,000 and gave every single dollar to Love Your Brain, which was a really cool experience. That was our second year doing it. The first year we did it with the bright pink bike.
You guys did a breast cancer thing too, right? That pink one was sick looking.
So, that was actually for Love Your Brain, but it was a little confusing because it was bright pink, which is kind of the color for the breast cancer. So that's why we did a purple one for the next year for Love Your Brain.
There you go.
But the pink one we did limited edition, 10 frames in this obnoxious Barbie pink color. I still ride one of them. I'll never ever get rid of it.
Yeah, that one's pretty sweet. I got a thing for pink right now, It's funny.
I always just rode black bikes until I owned a bike company and figured I better have the most obnoxious colored bikes for myself. But so yeah, anyway, so I made one more frame for myself for this purple thing and built it up. SRAM X01 axis, of course, our Revel wheels, RW30 wheels, which is kind of our enduro level rim. Industry 9 Hydra hubs. The engagement on those is freaking amazing. And then yeah, the cream of the crop is this push coil shock here. Push. They're all made in Colorado. Every little part's made here, and they are absolutely the cream of the crop. It makes every single bike ride so much better. So we started offering these about I think 6 or 9 months ago, and the response has been really good. So
you offer that on your builds as well, then?
Yeah.
We do, yeah. It's a custom option to select the push shock, and it's not the cheapest upgrade for the bike, but it's one thing.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
So worth it. It adds a little bit of weight, but for me, I don't care about going up hills. I'm pretty lucky. I have a lot of bikes, or I get to at least ride a lot of bikes.
Yeah.
I have my Ranger if I really want to sprint uphill real fast. Built up a little bit lighter, but this one is just kind of the do everything, really capable 29er.
So you're pretty impressed with the coils over the air shocks, personally?
Just the push.
Just the push. The push coil is amazing. We have put a lot of time on other coil shocks on our bikes, and we only sell the push. It's the absolute best. It's definitely the one we recommend. It all depends on your ride style, though. If you want a little lighter weight, the air shock's great. If you're okay adding a little bit of weight, but you really want to maximize that small bump compliance, the push coil is incredible.
How do you go about choosing like what the component line is, like instead of like SRAM or Shimano, or is it just like your personal opinion, or it's, hey, these guys are willing to meet the demand or the supply that we need, or how does that decision get made?
I actually saw that question. I saw that question in the comments as well. Somebody asked if we only spec SRAM.
That's a good question, because as our business grows, that becomes more and more difficult, especially with supply chain challenges of balancing that bike nerd side and what do we want to ride versus what do we want to, or what can we sell. And that's something I'm very proud of as a business. I mean, everyone in here rides bikes, and most people are really freaking good at riding bikes. I used to think I was pretty good at riding bikes until I go out with half our crew and can't keep up.
Get humbled.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience. But everything we sell on the bike is something that we would ride. We have kind of a policy that there's not a single item that we sell that we wouldn't ride. Our very, our most entry level product that we sell, our GX build, is a bike I would ride all day long, all year long. It's fantastic. And we've gone back and forth with, hey, should we, sell an NX version or a Shimano Dior or something to try to get the price point a little bit lower. And all of us collectively in the building just kind of thought, that's not a bike that we would personally want to ride. So that's kind of what all of our decision making with the spec is, do we want to ride it? And then, and that rules out a lot. I mean, there's a ton of bike parts out there, and there's a ton of them that don't make it as fun to rip down the trail. So we only sell what we want to ride. And so there's not a ton of choices there. SRAM has been absolutely incredible to work with. We love working with SRAM and RockShox. They were very supportive from the beginning when, before I launched the brand, I called some other brands to, say, hey, can we get an account to sell your products? And I got hung up on a few times, From the beginning, it was like,
they're really amazing.
They're like, weren't you the guy with the fat bikes?
Yeah.
Oh, the fat bike guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy.
You laugh, but I heard that. That's real. So we are working on some offerings from some other main component companies. We're not supposed to say yet, but we are working on expanding our offerings to have more options for people, still maintaining that, hey, if it's good enough that all of us in here want to ride it, we'll sell it. But right now, RockShox and SRAM are our main offerings. The push suspension was, that's another brand, and an upgrade. I do have a Fox transfer dropper post on there. I just love those things. Maybe it's the color, maybe it's how it feels. I can't quite say, but and then we make our own, under the Why Cycles brand, we make our own titanium handlebar. And I have put that on all of my bikes, titanium bikes and carbon. There's one on this bike here. The tie bar kind of gives a little bit of flex, and it soaks up some of those extra bumps, and it just helps add that really smooth, quiet ride quality that we look for.
Nice.
So we've started selling a lot more of those bars on our carbon bikes too.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just all the extra miles I've been doing, but for some reason, like a month ago, all of a sudden I just started having all this like hand pain, and it wasn't something that I had ever experienced before. But I'll say this last year and trying to lose weight or whatever, COVID, the opportunity to ride. Like, I mean, I've been riding at sometimes 7 days a week.
Hell yeah.
You know, typically at least 5 days a week, and it was just all of a sudden I'm like, I never had to think about that before, you know? And so all of a sudden I'm like, okay, looking at handlebars and different grips and reading about, apparently, you know, if you have your brakes rolled down too far, like that contributes to it. And so those things, they make a difference. They make a huge difference. So I can totally understand where you're coming from there. That makes me interested in checking that out. Somebody asked me,
we'll send you one to try out. It would be interesting to get your feedback since you've gone through having like some hand pain problems. But yeah, titanium bars. There's no other companies that put titanium bars on carbon, you know, more mainstream-ish full suspension bikes.
yeah.
So we get some funny looks, but most people ride them and they're like, "Holy shit, this feels good." So
This guy asked if you guys are going to do 35. So I guess that's it's not a 35 mil bar.
It's a 31.8 bar.
Yeah.
And the answer to the 35 bar is we've looked into it, and currently the answer is no. All of our titanium for these titanium bars and for our Y Cycles titanium frames, it's all cold formed. Hydroforming titanium isn't really a thing, and as soon as you add heat to the mix, it can mess up a lot of the metal properties and all the benefits. Mm-hmm. It can weaken it. So everything is cold formed. So to make that titanium bar, we start with a round tube, a butted tube, and then we have a steel mold, 12-ton press, and just smash it in there. And you have to you have to smash titanium quite a bit. Titanium is really tough to work with. When you bend it, it wants to bend back. So if we want to go to a 35, it's that much more material you have to bend and shape, and there can be little, you know, it causes more problems. So the quick answer to that is no. And then
the ride quality is crap.
The ride quality.
Yeah.
35 bars are not always the best riding bars.
It's just in titanium. Like you'd have to make it so much fatter, and then you're losing a lot of that flex and that give. Like what you came to the titanium bar for, like that hand comfort is just kind of lost if you start clamp size.
Yeah, because titanium as a whole is pretty tough to work with. I mean, to make a pretty titanium bike is not easy. I mean, my understanding is just like being able to weld that, or it's not. It takes much more skill than it did, you know, with the other materials. You
can't let oxygen touch the welds. So there's a argon gas pump on. There's holes internally in all the miters of the tubes, so the argon gas runs through the bike frame as the welds are being done to keep it clean. It's a whole different level than normal steel or aluminum welding.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. That's for sure. You're obviously up for the challenge, though, right?
And that's the fun part. It's so fun to have an idea for a bike product and then to see it turn into reality, and then to see a bunch of other people want to buy it. Like that's kind of this world we're living in now, where we're like, holy shit, all these people want to buy these bikes that we made. We didn't. I never thought it'd be as popular as it is, and we're still a tiny bike company in the big scheme of things. I mean, you know, I think we just hired our 19th person. So we're pretty small.
Let's come a long way from 7 nerds in a warehouse in a tiny mountain in Colorado. So it's been a heck of a 2 years.
Hey, on. What you had mentioned earlier that there was some other bikes kind of in the making. That would be. Is that something that's going to happen this year, or is that like next year, or is that God knows because of COVID, or?
Yes.
Can't say.
Yes. Yeah, it's more the latter there. COVID has caused all sorts of delays with everything, and I don't even ever know if doesn't need to hear me say that anymore. But yeah, we have some new stuff in the works, but we don't have any dates on when any of it's
nothing set on the time frame yet. Hey, it's totally understandable as well. I was thinking too, I wanted to ask when we were talking about the components, I've heard before that like whenever you reach out to, let's say, SRAM, that they want you to have basically like their whole group set on the whole bike. Like they want all the pieces. Is that true? Or is it like, do you have actually the flexibility to be able to say, hey, I want your drivetrain, but I want, Shimano brakes instead or something like that?
Yeah. SRAM's, they're fantastic to work with. And, they've been very flexible with us. I don't know what other brands deals are, but I bought a bunch of products from them when I worked when I owned Borealis, enough so that at Sea Otter one year they put me SRAM sponsor all the follow cars for all the pro races. So I got to sit in like the lead follow car for the pro men's criterium at Sea Otter as like a thank you for being a customer. And that was
that's cool. That's super cool.
Like it was so rad to like go down that corkscrew at 60 miles an hour and follow a peloton of people. So it's a lot of SRAM. But they've been awesome to us. So we can buy whatever we want from them. But we choose to spec their whole kits. We do offer Fox suspension. Fox has also been fantastic to work with. Their suspension products are absolutely incredible. So a lot of our bikes we sell, if people buy them from us, or bike shops can custom order based off our spec kits. They can buy, a SRAM GX bike with Fox factory suspension, and that's totally cool. So sure. Yeah, we can kind of do whatever, but I've heard, every brand has a different deal with them. And we've been really lucky. Jeremiah, our COO, worked at RockShox for 15 years and designed a whole ton of their products. It's actually how I met him, is he designed the first fat bike fork that RockShox made in Colorado. He was based in Colorado Springs. That's where I had Borealis fat bikes. I got to know him as the lead engineer on this fork project. So we just kind of, I'm amazed at how many awesome connections our collective group of people have. And that's really led to a small brand like ours being able to do a lot more than I think we would have.
It's really nice working with friends, basically, those folks in SRAM, they're only a few hours down the road in the springs, and sometimes they just call to say hi. The bike industry is much smaller than I thought it was when I started,
in this social media space. I definitely didn't realize that it's a pretty close knit community, and like you were saying, hey, this dude from Envy, or this, guy from here, like everybody kind of knows each other. And I think that's, plays into what you said earlier about, it's not necessary. It has a lot to do with, who and how you can get things done and relationships,
And I think one experience that speaks to that, that I like to tell, is that like we ride other companies' bikes, we think all bikes are badass, the day we launched at Sedona, we had people that I've looked up to since I was a kid from other bike companies come over to our booth and be like, holy shit, that's what you've been working on? This is amazing. Congratulations. Like, if you need any advice, let me know. I've been doing it for a long time. I've probably made all the mistakes. And and it's like been this like tide that's rising all ships. Like, I think it's almost instinctual for, average American to think that there's like this huge competition and like cutthroat in the industry.
Yeah.
But really, man, we're all just making badass toys and going and having fun on them as much as possible. And everybody's been so supportive to us. Like, there's been a handful of brands that we can't even thank enough that are that we're direct competitors with, and they've just been amazing. So
how do people buy your bikes? They like direct to consumer? Is it also just bike shops, or what's the best way to go about it?
Anything and everything. Whoever wants to give us money can get a bike.
Show up at the front door and like.
Oh yeah, no, that happens. Yeah. So we sell direct to consumer on our website. Much more so as we've grown. We sell through bike shops in the US. We have just over 100 dealers now that are stocking Revel Bikes dealers in America. And then I think we have like 17 or 20 international distributors. So it's one company in, say, the UK, for example, that will import our products and then sell to all their bike shops. We have a fantastic distributor in Australia. I mean, we can go on our website. There's a list of all of them. So,
and when it's not a pandemic, you can just come to the warehouse and pick out a bike and have a cup of coffee or a beer. And
we have a full like espresso bar, and we can't publicly say that we have a bar, but we might hand you a beer or something. And we have like a showroom area here. We built it all out, and then the pandemic happened. So not too many people come to check it out. It's a very, very humble warehouse that we do have here, but hopefully as soon as, all this stuff gets back to normal, you can come here, you can demo a bike, and you can buy a bike here.
Yeah, we have a trailhead a quarter mile from the door one direction and 4 miles from the door the other direction. It's pretty cool.
There's also, if you don't want to buy it from us, Worldwide Cyclery, Fanatic, a few other really awesome retailers. Just Google Revel Bikes, and hopefully we've done our job.
How do you guys go about picking stuff like tires or something like that? You just go out and because tires are really like, in my opinion, like geographically centric. Like what I might love here in Northern California, somebody in Southern California or Arizona might hate, or somebody back east could be like, those are horrible. Like, how do you choose something like that on a bike that you're selling to everybody?
We do our best, but the first check is Maxxis.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
There's no other tire.
Right.
And,
we're gonna sound like a broken record, but back to having friends and we like working with our friends. The crew at Maxxis, Andrew, Ryan, the whole crew there has just been incredible to work with. We've been personal friends with a lot of them for a long time. So that was another company that before I launched the brand, I called them and they said, absolutely. And, here's great pricing, and we'd love to be on your bikes. And do you need some extra tires to use in your demo fleet? And Maxxis has just been incredible. And the tires are the best. I mean, they're the best. But I will say, like, one of the more heated arguments that happens in our building has to do with product spec, and tire spec is the number one culprit there, because exactly like you said, it's really geographic. Once you choose a RockShox Pike fork, there's a few different damper levels, and a lot of that comes into pricing and performance goal. Yeah. But tires everyone has a preference, and we have a building of some people that are very high level riders on a world class stage, and they get pretty opinionated. So. We do a lot of tire testing. It's really cool when, Maxxis will send us like, a huge bundle of tires that no one else has seen before. And they say, ride them. And then we get to ride them and see what they feel like and decide if we, might want to spec that. So tire testing is fun, but man, there's a lot of options out there, and there's never a right answer. So
it's crazy too. I mean, just between the seasons, like the difference in the dirt and on how you feel about tires. I mean, there was one that I was using earlier this year that I was just like, that Minion SS, one of my buddies was talking about that tire for the longest time, and I just like kept blowing him off because I had tried some other like short knobby tire in the past and hated it because it didn't break well, and my buddy just wouldn't shut up about it. And finally I bought one, and then I was like, this is my new favorite tire,
for the summer.
Yeah, exactly. It had like there's like a hard cutoff of how wet the trail can get before that tire is complete shit.
Right.
But like,
it becomes dangerous.
Yeah. But before that point, it's just amazing because it rolls so fast, but it still has that great cornering. And I don't understand how it breaks so well. But I mean, there's definitely been a handful of tires that I've tried on bikes that it was just like, oh, I got this new bike. It had these tires on it. I probably would have never selected them. And because of that circumstance, I ended up, kind of expanding my horizons, and so, but I can't imagine how I would choose one that I would think is going to be good for everyone. I guess if anything, you just kind of maybe over tire it, if anything.
Yeah. And it's actually, we've actually had a lot of customers and bike media point out our tire spec is something that we do very well, which is good because we do have some heated arguments about it. But a lot of brands will choose just a lightweight tire for their bike. A little lower cost, might wear out quicker, but it's nice and light. So when you hang that bike on the scale in the bike shop and you get your bike weight, oh great, it's 27 pounds or whatever. But then realistically, most people are going to want to immediately toss off those OEM tires and spend $100 a tire on something new for that brand new bike. And our goal is, back to maybe it's environmental or just practical or whatever, but less waste is better. Like there's not a single product on any of the bikes we sell that we would expect a customer would need to rip off and put on something new. And that's our big one. A lot of times people buy a bike and they immediately go buy new tires. And I think we've at least done the best we can to eliminate most of that, where we choose tires for each model bike that'll kind of optimize that bike in those areas. And we choose the good compounds too. Like, spend a little bit more money on our side to get a tire that, we know is going to last on our Red Rock trails here, that, if we wanted to choose a cheaper option, none of us would ride it. So you could just go, it's a really simple rule of if it's a product we want to ride, that's what we sell. Tires are tough though.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point there. I mean, it's a drag if you're going to go spend a couple $1,000s on a bike and then have to like have it show up and buy another, couple $100 on tires because you're not stoked about what came on it.
Yeah, and we've all done it. Like all of us have been bike consumers before we were bike makers. So it sucks when you buy a bike and you're like, wow, this dropper post doesn't even function once you get it off the sales floor. Let's buy a new one. So we try to meet different price point bikes, and we're definitely a high end brand. We're not selling low price bikes. We could, but then if someone buys it, you replace 3 or 4 parts on there, you end up spending enough, as much as you would on a new GX bike anyway. So it's a fine balance of, we want to make bikes for everybody, but they're definitely, bikes are expensive and they're high end.
Yeah.
It's just
you got to make the bikes that you want to make though too, right? I mean, because you're the one that has to like lay your head down at night, right? So I don't know. I would be in the same spot as you, and kind of more like I'd rather sell a high-end bike that fits the type of rider that I am as well as my friends. And when those other guys that want to buy the cheaper stuff get to the point where they want to buy this kind of bike, then they can.
Yeah, there's tons of other bikes out there. I mean, I think everyone should go buy a $500 bike to start, and probably later they'll get hooked and buy a nicer bike, and then the next year they'll buy a nicer one, and you just figure it out. Once you get into it, you just figure out how to get the bike you want to ride.
Yeah. I mean, interested. I'm curious. I want to ask you guys about what's coming, but I know the answer I'm going to get, so I'm just going to keep going.
So the element of surprise is definitely, nobody knew that we were coming when we launched. We popped on the scene, and there's an old expression, nobody likes surprises, but I do. I like it.
Right. Definitely.
You'll be surprised. We'll leave it at that.
So it's going to be the new 36-inch wheel standard, and
69-inch wheel penny farthing.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Whenever you're kind of the new bike or the bikes that you guys have made already, we were talking earlier, just like 1 millimeter this way or that way makes a huge difference on things. How do you go from like looking at that on a computer screen to, obviously you kind of need to ride some of them before you can know that that's what you want, but how do you even like drill that down to like, here's the general 5 designs that we want? Because I mean, I know when I make like logos or stickers for my channel, like I'll have like 95 versions. And so I can imagine that. I mean, you obviously can't do that on making frames. How do you guys go about it?
Yeah, well, I started off doing it the wrong way, and now I think we do it the right way. So I learned the hard way with the very first bike we made, the first rail prototype. I thought did everything right, and we got the first prototype, and I pedaled it around, and I was like, this is not right. And I paid for a steel mold, which is a big pile of money. And this is 4 years ago now or so, and that was a pretty tough. It wasn't a tough decision. It was a tough pill to swallow, to say, well, I'm going to recycle that steel mold and go make a new one with all the right stuff. And now, and then what I did is started working Jeremiah, and now we have 2 full-time engineers here. And it's pretty incredible the amount of work you can do in computer modeling and computer simulation. And now that we have our baseline and we know what we like, when we adapt this model and these suspension kinematics to the next bike with more or less travel or different wheel sizes or whatever, we're very, very confident in how it's going to ride. So we kind of the first rail we had, once we nailed it, which was took 2 steel molds to do, which was a whole big pile of wasted money. Then we did 13 carbon fiber layups to see how the ride quality was going to work. And
so that's the same frame design, but just laying the fiber differently so that it flexes in different spots or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so every single time I thought, man, we nailed it, and I'd get that bike, we'd build it up right away at night. A lot of times, like, some of the original crew would be at my house, at midnight building up that bike that just showed up. And we'd go ride it the next day, or if it was winter here, we'd drive, straight to the nearest dry trail to ride it. Every time I thought, this is for sure the one, we're going to be able to launch this company in 2 months now. And every time you can tell them, 100 yards in the parking lot that, man, this isn't quite right. So we'd go back with another iteration. And so through all that kind of trial and error process, I learned that you can do a whole lot of that work up front. We learned a lot of lab testing. So we have just a ton of testing. There's ISO tests, and then there's a whole lot of, we call them the we know better testing, where you can simulate a lot of this ride quality stuff in the lab. So we can quantify a lot of this stuff now. So we have a bit of a formula for how to make the suspension ride well, and then the carbon frame ride well. And then you ride test it to kind of make sure that all that work you did and all that engineering work was correct. And I'm proud to say the Ranger, the third bike in the lineup, we were able to develop much faster because of all those things we learned on the other bikes. And going forward with some new bikes we're working on, we've just taken all the things we learned and kind of applied them to be able to do things more efficiently.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you would build in aluminum or something like that so that you could at least pedal it and then kind of see hey, is the angles right? But I didn't even think about the layup of the carbon as well being a completely other factor of how it all kind of falls together.
Yeah, we do a lot of 3D printing now. So we have hanging on our wall, if you ever come visit, we have a whole frame, 3D printed plastic frame, so you can kind of check fitment and things like that. But really in the last 4 or 5 years since we started developing these bikes, we've just kind of learned all the ways to eliminate those errors. We've learned a lot about the geometries we want. Making the Why Cycles products has been a really great way to experiment with geometry, because it's a whole lot faster and significantly cheaper to weld a single titanium frame to say, hey, what's it going to feel like with a 76-degree seat angle and 64-degree head angle. So we've kind of done some experimenting that way, and then we can sort of apply what we learn with geometry stuff to our carbon bike. So I think because we have such a breadth of products and different types of manufacturing, between our kind of collective group of, either really good bikers or, engineers, we're able to kind of work together and get things done quickly. It used to be a lot of companies would do aluminum prototypes and whatnot, and that's less and less popular as 3D printing is more of a thing, and computer simulation is well.
What would you like to see change in the bike industry?
I'd like to get more bike parts so we can send more bikes out the door. if the supply chain problems can be fixed, we'd all sleep a lot better at night.
Yeah, that's a good one there, huh? That's for sure.
Then, in seriousness, like what Chris is saying, the bike industry is freaking amazing. Like when we launched, I had people that I'd read about in magazines, send me an email saying congratulations, and it is really freaking cool. I would not want to work in a different industry. When I sold Borealis, my first company, for about a week, I thought, oh, there's no way I'm doing bike stuff again, because it's kind of a stressful thing. And a week later, I thought, you know what? Why would I ever do anything different? Chris did the corporate world, and come back to the bike thing. It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
It's on a good track. I mean, it's socially aware, it's environmentally aware. It might be small, but it's still a big ship to turn. Mountain biking did grow really fast. You think, 30 years ago, it wasn't even really a thing. We're just now through our kind of awkward adolescence as an industry, and and everybody's really realizing, like us, we're not alone. Like we can rewrite some rules. We can make parts that are recyclable. We can give all our employees benefits. Stuff that other comparable industries, maybe not in the outdoor realm, the same size, aren't doing. They're not being as conscious of their surroundings, of their audience, and we're we're pretty thankful to have the community we have around us. The other companies have been so rad, and it's just a really great place to be. And it's only getting better.
Yeah. It's definitely been interesting. I started riding mountain bikes in the 90s, and I mean, they were essentially like road bikes with knobby tires and flat handlebars. It really wasn't a whole right. Yeah, it wasn't really a whole lot different. And every year you try these newer suspensions or designs, and you think to yourself, man, it can't get any better than this. Like this is amazing, and then a year or two later, a company like you guys come out and change it up again, and you're like, holy crap! Like I don't see where the room for improvement is, and it's awesome that there's companies out there like you guys that are, working hard to try to come up with something new every year. And that I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody else out there does as well. And definitely has to be humbling, to see your product out there, on people's Instagram and them stoked, having a good time. And
gosh, when we launched, I had the idea of, this is going to be this quaint little DTC brand, like direct to consumer, and maybe a couple shops here and there from our friends. And I want to ride with every single person that buys a Revel. Like that was my goal, like I want to show up to a town and get on Facebook, like, you ride a Revel, like, let's go. And I don't know if we can do that anymore, which is crazy. It gives me all the feels, like I still want to do it. I'm still coming to your town. And I'm still going to try and ride with everybody that's on a Revel, and it's really been amazing.
Yeah, I'm definitely stoked to see how this summer plays out. Last year I wanted to come to Colorado to ride, because it's not that far of a drive, for me, and a lot of the stuff that I've seen online just looks like it's in my wheelhouse, like the type of riding that I like to do. And so maybe this summer I can make my way over there.
We'll give you the grand tour. We got downhill trails, chairlifts, uphill, everything you can imagine in a pretty close area. We'll show you around.
There's a lot of stuff in these hills. There's a lot of hills.
Yeah. Well, I'm apparently it's a little easier for me to get up and down them now. So I'm looking forward to it, to say the least. But you guys got some good gnarly chunk out there. That's the stuff that I really like doing, and I don't mind putting the work in if the payoff is worth it, and
chunk above tree line, which is the shit.
Yeah. That's tough up there at those high elevations, though, man. Especially when you're climbing, you're like, I know in Tahoe, some of the highest that we get is pretty close to 10,000. You guys have stuff bigger than that. And, I know once we get up, like probably about 8,500 feet for me, and I start feeling like you get to the all fuck it stage, you're like I could ride over that rock, but fuck it, trying to get off and walk.
Yeah, Shram Eagle's really nice out here. Up at those elevations, you don't push hard.
Yeah. I definitely have like I've just been recently deciding to put on a bigger chainring again, and it's like I do this every year during the winter because I'm not riding at elevation. I'm like, I could go 34. That'll be good, because then I have more crank for the downhill, and then as soon as I start riding at elevation again, I'm like, nope, switch it back.
Everybody that rides at 34 or 36 in this building is in their mid-20s and has a pro card. So that's like enough reminder to me that I need to scale it down. So
I wore out my last one right whenever I changed bikes. So when I changed bikes, it came with a 32, and I was like, oh man, this is really nice. Man, I'm going to stick with this. But, right about now, that thing's about worn out. And I'm like, I definitely need a 34. Definitely need it. So,
never worth it.
I'm not very intelligent, so just don't learn any lessons. Well, man, I had a great time chatting with you. It's been 2 hours, and you guys have been super fun to have on. Is there anything that you guys want to say in closing, or like last thing that maybe was something we didn't touch on?
No, I'm just thankful that you thought of us, and we're still kind of in this like we can't believe it, phase in our but it's been really cool to talk, and hopefully some people got a better idea of who we are and what we represent, and when things are safe and the world's open again, everybody has an open invite to stop by, and usually there's somebody leaving for a ride at lunch. Mostly all of us. So we'll even go ride with you. So so come on down. That's all.
Right on,
Open invite for closings.
Right on. Sweet. Well, like I said, it was a good time chatting. For all you guys that have hung out the whole time, I appreciate all of you coming. Oh, no, I don't want to hit that button yet. All you guys coming and hanging out as well. Do me a favor. If you liked the episode, hit the like button, the subscribe button, all that jazz. You guys know how that stuff works. If you really want to follow the channel a little bit more, swing by the Instagram. If you want to find out more about Revel Bikes, there's a link in the show more of the YouTube, or if you're on a podcast, there should be in the podcast notes or whatever a link to get over there as well. Definitely go check them out. They got some pretty sweet bikes over there. I like the colors. The paint schemes look good. Like I said, the fonts are sick. The builds are good. Nothing but good reviews from what I've heard from just about everybody I've talked to. Like I said, I haven't heard anything negative. So you definitely have to get out there and throw your leg over something. And give it a shot yourself. So I'm actually really looking forward to that, coming out to Colorado and maybe seeing you guys this summer, and everybody else out there. I just want you guys all to remember one thing: it only takes a bike to be a biker, and so get out and be one.
Hell yeah.